All righty. Welcome, everybody, to our first introductory podcast for the Inside the Psychopathic Mind. It is a new podcast that myself and Carl Gacono are starting. Our big goal for it is to present some science on psychopathy. We're going to take some questions from the listeners. We're going to have some guests. We're going to talk about cases from our past, ripped from the headlines. All those things is our goal over the next coming weeks, months, years of this podcast. Before, though, we get into some of the stuff that we do want to get into, we are going to give a little bit of background of ourselves. I'll start. My name is Jason Smith. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been working in federal prisons for over 11 years, been working in state forensic hospitals before that and state prisons, mainly working with female offenders. That has been all my research has been with female offenders with Carl and also our other colleague, Ted Cunliffe. We've started this over 16, 17 years ago. Specifically myself working with the female offenders and studying them. We wrote a book, Understanding Female Offenders, in 2021. We have a bunch of knowledge, not only on female offenders, but in psychopathy, different psychological measures. And I'm very interested in presenting our experience to the listeners and hope that you guys enjoy that. Feel free to comment and send us questions and things like that. And I just want to kind of share my experience with this type of population to better help everybody, not only psychologists, but anybody that works in day-to-day operations or with a loved one or in a intimate or friendship type of relationship. So we hope that you enjoy this podcast. And now I'll throw it over to my colleague, Carl Gacono, who will talk about his experiences and what he hopes to gain too.
Well, Jason, when I listened to that introduction, I realized how long we've been doing this stuff. My first book came out in 1994, along with Reed Malloy, and it was on the Rorschach assessment of aggressive and psychopathic personalities. When I think about my background and training, it's kind of been similar to yours. I'll highlight some things. I'll just say that probably I worked about 20 years in institutional settings, much like you. And then I spent another 20 years probably in private practice where I did primarily forensic evaluations and worked with the court. But one of the interesting things I think about that kind of work in beginning as a young pre-psychologist working in jails and prisons and things like that is the first thing I had noted was that the kind of people that we interact with and working with in those places think differently than we do. And that became my first research interest, because I think one of the things that both you and I bring to the table is not only clinical work with these people, but also having studied, written books, and conducted research to actually know what's going on with them. Then I would later go on to do my PhD. And at that time, I was exposed to many more what I didn't know at the time, but would have been called psychopaths. And this led to my second question in my background is that not everyone that's in jails and prison are the same. So what are some valid, useful ways of differentiating among these kind of individuals? And while in San Diego working on my PhD, I also worked on an inpatient unit with children who were conduct disordered and adolescents in a bunch of community-based programs, and along with the probation department there. So I really began to see developmentally how these kind of disorders and issues kind of, they don't just arrive one day out of the blue. They develop over time. And the development is so important to answering the kind of questions that we're often asked. But just to highlight a few of my things with my background is I had been the assessment center director at Atascadero State Hospital, which at the time had been the country's largest maximum security forensic hospital. And I guess I had the I don't know if I call it the pleasure, but I had the opportunity to be able to interview all the psychopaths there, or serial killers, or sexual homicide perpetrators, malingers, any of the difficult cases, which really was such a valuable thing to have in my background. Another thing, then I would go on to work for the Federal Bureau of Prisons, much like you, and be a chief psychologist at one time, and also direct a substance abuse program. But as these work experience seemed to go in a linear fashion, so would my interest in more fine-tuned kind of understanding of different populations within the criminal population. So I would eventually kind of become interested and have the opportunity to interview some serial killers, many sexual homicide perpetrators, but of course, over the course of the time, many psychopaths. And I think, as the two of us have thought about this, why we would even want to do a podcast, because traditionally we're writing articles and publishing books. So why are we doing this? And I think one of the thing that came out for both of us was the idea that when you look what's out there in the literature and the media and so forth, it seems like everybody feels qualified to offer an opinion about psychopathy. And there's so much bad information and misinformation that certainly what we would bring to the table in this regard would be helpful to not only professionals, but also lay people struggling with these issues, because we certainly have the background to be able to clarify terms, talk about prediction, talk about a criminal personality, talk about psychopathy and the differences with antisocial personality disorder, and so on. So that's always been a goal. I think something we both sought to achieve is clarity and truth in the research and find out really what's happening.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that is our main goal, to get our information out there, to be the most useful for everybody, and kind of bust some of the myths and the theories and that are probably causing maybe quote unquote controversies or things like that. So that is going to be our goal, over the lifespan of this podcast. Like I said in the beginning, we're going to share stories. We're going to provide helpful tools, not only to psychologists, but to people that have to deal with these people on a day-to-day basis. So we one of our big things, recently we wrote an article on Charles Manson and Ted Bundy. We're definitely going to kind of talk about that in future episodes. We're going to talk about female psychopathy, because that is much different than male psychopathy. Like I said, we're going to look at articles that are in the headlines, provide some insights. We're going to talk about some controversies that we identify, and how we assess these people. So that's going to be our goal for everything. So we hope that you listen, send us questions, comments. We are more than happy. We'll take some time to answer them as well. Both of myself and Carl, if you want to get a hold of us, if you go to maverickpsychology.com, there's a whole bunch of links to our contact, whether it be our LinkedIn. All our research is on there, all our books, links to all our books, previous podcasts that we've done, or videos that we've put up. So please feel free to like, subscribe to both the podcast, and follow us on different social medias. We'd be happy to hear from you, and we hope that you enjoy the podcast.